You know, there's still time to call the church and call this whole thing off. Hey, if you're hearing something familiar on your radio, you're probably a member of Generation X. You're probably a member of Generation X who has grown up with the great radio stations of Jet Broadcasting, including the legendary sports programming these stations have had and obviously will now continue to have. And if you've been a fan of that, you're therefore anxiously following the development of the new 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities, so you might just recognize me if you are of that generation. I am Marky Billson, and in a previous generation, I helped introduce sports talk on this station. But today, I come to you after many of you are familiar with my writing, the old Sports Talk magazine around here, where I was lauded by the Tennessee Sports Writers Association, won awards for coverage of ETSU dropping football and Ed Chelis's departure to Penn State, and did a lot of nice features elsewhere as well. More recently, I've written about the SEC. Many of you are familiar with my piece asking how Steve Spurrier is viewed online, my piece online asking how Steve Spurrier is viewed in Johnson City, the dichotomy of his generation against the generation that is younger and sees him only as an enemy of the Tennessee Volunteers. And that is a very unique view at how sports fans around here are different than those just about anywhere else. And some of that's good and some of it's bad. But I could, tell you if you're not familiar with who I am and, kind of slipping down maybe the periphery of the local sports scene, if you will, in media when I've been around here. Yeah, a lot of my resume is impressive, and I'm sure I'll be referencing it to you as I host this program, Tri-City Sports Now, for the week. But reading a resume gets pretty boring, and the fact of the matter is it means nothing if you don't appreciate the content I'm going to give you now. The content I will give you will be cutting edge. It will be truthful. It will pull no punches. It will speak truth to power and not make excuses, but rather say what everyone's thinking. But in this market, it's never really been given the outlet to speak, or at least not for the last 20 years. Vols laid an egg on Thursday? Well, we know that, but we don't say that. We say around here that we don't say they're lucky to win. We say it's only one game. Why, the best team won in the long haul. We say Appalachian State, who somehow Scott Satterfield forget to include a legitimate kicker on his team this year. We point out, hey, they're picked to win the Sun Belt Championship. They're a great team. Never mind that a Sun Belt team competing with an SEC team, So a lot of people out there in this market, I find, make excuses instead of give true analysis. And as a result, they never think ahead. Well, here, I don't do that. And I won't do that. And that's why it's my mission and my passion to help make this the best sports radio station in the Tri-Cities. I am blessed to do it during the week of the Battle of Bristol. I'm blessed to do it in what may be the greatest football week ever in the Tri-Cities. You heard me. And to hopefully make people realize just how cosmopolitan their area can truly be, and it can be done through sports. But the big news coming out of this past weekend was the East Tennessee State Buccaneers defeating the Kennesaw State Owls in Georgia 20-17 in overtime. It's an incredible reversal from last year. And to discuss before we full dive this week into the Battle of Bristol talk, we'll have on two ETSU legends today. You see, I think ETSU is a very important sports entity in this market. They're the only Division I program in the Tri-Cities. As such, as wonderful as the Battle of Bristol is, it's an event. The Buccaneers are a team, and they're the only team that could conceivably win a championship that the whole country could care about. The NCAA Men's Basketball Championship, and to a lesser extent the College World Series, as well as the Women's Basketball National Championship. But those are the big-time titles that the country cares about. You cared when Villanova won the national championship this year. You thought it was great when Coastal Carolina won the national championship in the College World Series. But that could happen here, theoretically. And maybe we should underline theoretically, but that could happen here. And I think it's time that, as a top 100 market, we start asking Could it ever happen here? Should it ever happen here? And I know we want it to happen here. So, to start what will be the station that shows what sports talk can be in influence, in entertainment, and in information, we're going to have on the man who showed that East Tennessee State athletics can be of the level I just spoke of. The most legendary athletic figure ever to call himself an ETSU Buccaneer. Keith Mr. Jennings will be joining us very shortly. Great way to kick off the week. Second, we're going to talk to ETSU defensive coordinator Billy Taylor later on in the program. He's the engineer of what could very well be the most influential ETSU football victory ever. And, well, when we're talking about superlatives, if you'd like to join, the number is 423-743-6124. That number again, 423-743-6124. Now, I know I began by saying, hey, yeah, I'm going to be the guy. I'm not going to pull any punches with you here. I'm going to tell it like it is. And then you say, really, ETSU's biggest football victory ever? It's only one game. I mean, if you want to tell me that the Tennessee fans are being a little bit of an apologist when they say, hey, that overtime victory against Appalachian State, it's just one game. I mean, they could rebound against Virginia Tech and Bristol, and they very well could. But if you want to play that cliche, then you have to do it when the Buccaneers win, don't you? Possibly. Probably. And I know also you say, boy, this guy must not have a good grasp of history. Grantland Rice Bowl, that's the biggest ETSU football victory. True, but it didn't really have much staying power. 2 years after ETSU defeated Terry Bradshaw and Louisiana Tech in the Grantland Rice Bowl to complete an undefeated season in 1969, they were winless in 1971. Meanwhile, Louisiana Tech is now an FBS program. We're going to talk about if ETSU could maybe one day be that program. Hey, they're going to be playing in Bristol after Tennessee and Virginia Tech. Same venue, won't draw as many fans. But they're at least thinking of themselves, even in a secondary role, in that vein. The other great victory in ETSU history would have occurred in 1987 when they defeated NC State, defeating an FBS program. It was then Division I AA. That's pretty impressive, but, you know, no staying power. ETSU had a losing record that year. And so you look at what is a victory that maybe, you know, built a season, built a pathway to success for a year or two or three or more. Really the only one that I can think of since I was covering it, I covered it for this very station, was in 1996 when ETSU beat Liberty 24-20. Opening day of the college football season, and they went on to have a 10-3 record. Made the Elite Eight, I believe it was. They made it to the quarterfinal round of the NCAA. It was then 1AA playoffs. Never forget it. Going right up after it, interviewing Mike Cavan. Is this your biggest victory ever at ETSU? You know, just memories, the adrenaline and all that. And that did propel ETSU to a good season. But you look at, you know, victories. I mean, ETSU in 2001 beat Georgia Southern, who was ranked number 1 in the country at the time. And, yes, Division I AA. But, you know what? Didn't have any staying power. 3 years later, there was no team. So why is this possibly the greatest victory? Because it could lead to bigger and better things. And by beating Kennesaw State, it may have put them ahead of KSU in the FCS pecking order. I honestly thought that I'd be bashing the Bucs coming on here. I honestly thought that it'd be another lopsided loss, just like it was last year when KSU debuted their football program as ETSU debuted their football program. Tickets going for $200 on StubHub, and what happened? KSU wins 56-16. 1 year later, a 43-point reversal. I thought I'd be on here and saying that Carl Torbush, he's a man, he's too old. He should have recruited some JUCOs. What do they do? You don't want to go to a high school stadium. Again, same old ETSU, not realizing what they could be. But now, I wonder if Carl Torbush isn't like Mike Krzyzewski. Remember when Mike Krzyzewski was at Duke? Well, you have to be of the generation, but if not, here's a little history lesson. Back in the early 80s, Duke was awful. I remember watching them 82-83. They were 11-17, next to last in the ACC, lost in the ACC tournament to Virginia by 41 points, going nowhere. I thought Duke was just a lousy basketball program as a young man, but they had a lot of freshmen on that team, including a guy named Johnny Dawkins, who you still see today as a sportscaster. And after that horrible year that Duke had, in 82-83, 11-17, blown out just like every game. 4 years later, Johnny Dawkins and company were playing for a national championship. Now, do I think that in 2, 3, 4 years ETSU will be playing for a national championship? Probably not. But they are playing for respect. They are playing for legitimacy. And, just an incredible turnaround. Again, it's one game. This year, they don't get to pick their schedule, which they did last year, and they went 2-9 on, losing every game by more points than they care to remember. But that victory against KSU, even if it meant in the fourth quarter their offense was going backwards, even if it had to be in overtime, it was rather impressive. And the fact of the matter, to totally role reverse like that, and it gives you hope for the Southern Conference season that is coming up. Just something to think about. And it'll be a great game, you hope, when they play in Bristol against Western Carolina. Another program on the way up. A couple of 7-victory seasons for the Catamounts after a just horrid stretch of 8 seasons. But it's looking good right now, after 1 week, for ETSU. And where could they go? They could go far. They could take this victory into something very special. I'll be talking about that later on. But for now, and when we come back, I'm going to be talking to Mr. ETSU. That's right. I'm going to be talking to the legend, Keith Mr. Jennings, now an assistant coach at Lees-McRae, but quite probably the most, I'd say, the greatest athlete to ever play for a local sports team. I mean, you can talk about Steve Spurrier, but he wasn't fully developed then. He was a high school kid. Keith Jennings was leading the Buccaneers to great prominence when he was there. We'll talk about it when we come back. Tri-City Sports Now, 1420 NBC Sports Radio in the Tri-Cities, Tennessee area.